I want you to think about the last time you backed away from something difficult, not something dangerous, not something reckless, just difficult. Maybe it was a conversation you kept postponing, a creative project you shelved when it stopped being easy, a habit you were building right up until the moment it started demanding something real from you, a relationship that asked you to be vulnerable, and you decided you'd rather be defended. Think about that moment, that exact second the difficulty appeared on the horizon and you turned around. What did it feel like? I'll tell you what it felt like. It felt like relief. It felt like the right call. It felt like intelligence. Like you'd be smart enough to see the trap before you stepped in it. Your shoulders dropped. Your breathing slowed. You went home, put on something comfortable, and the world felt manageable again. But here's what I want to ask you. What did that moment cost you? Not today, not even last month, but across time. What did turning away from that hard thing actually cost you? That's what we're going to talk about today. We live in a civilization that has done something extraordinary. We have engineered discomfort almost entirely out of daily life. We have central heating, food delivery, noise-canceling headphones, instant entertainment, same-day shipping, apps that let you end a relationship with a swipe so you never have to look someone in the eye. And I want to be clear, a lot of this is genuinely good. I'm not standing here to romanticize suffering. I'm not telling you to sleep on a wooden floor or take cold showers as some kind of badge of honor. The reduction of unnecessary pain is one of the great achievements of human civilization. But there is a category of discomfort we were never meant to engineer away, and somewhere in the last few decades, we stopped being able to tell the difference between the two. There is the discomfort of injustice, and that we should absolutely fight. There's a discomfort of illness, and that we should treat. There's a discomfort of grief, of loneliness, of poverty, and all those deserve real solutions. But then there's a different kind of discomfort entirely, the discomfort of attempting something you don't yet know how to do. The discomfort of having a necessary conversation you'd rather avoid. The discomfort of starting over after failing. The discomfort of staying in something hard long enough to get good at it. The discomfort of being seen, really seen, before you feel ready. That discomfort is not a malfunction. That discomfort is the signal. That is the sensation of your edges being expanded. That is your nervous system registering something significant is happening here. And we have been so sophisticated at avoiding it that we've started mistaking the avoidance for wisdom. We call it protecting our energy. We call it setting boundaries. We call it not forcing things. We call it trusting the universe. And sometimes those things are exactly right. Sometimes retreat is the correct move. But sometimes, and I want you to sit with this, sometimes those phrases are just very elegant ways of saying, I was afraid and I left. Here's what makes this so difficult. Your brain is not broken when it pulls away from discomfort. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The same system that stops you from finishing that difficult project is the same system that stopped your great-grandmother from touching a hot coal twice. The signal is identical. The problem is that the brain, for all its magnificence, does not distinguish between a physical threat and a social one. It does not distinguish between the pain of a predator and the pain of a performance review. It does not distinguish between the discomfort of starvation and the discomfort of learning something hard. To the brain, discomfort is discomfort, and the solution is always the same. Get away from it as fast as possible. So when you sit down to write and it's going badly, the brain says leave. When you walk into a gym for the first time and everyone seems to know what they're doing, the brain says leave. When a relationship gets complicated and you don't know the right words, the brain says leave. When a business idea stops being exciting and starts being actual work, the brain says leave. And here's the genius of it. It doesn't just say leave. It gives you reasons to leave. It is a lawyer. It builds a case. It says this isn't the right time. You're not ready. You're not qualified. You're tired. There's a better opportunity somewhere else. You deserve rest. This is toxic. This doesn't feel right. Some of those things are occasionally true, but the brain will deliver them every single time you approach discomfort, whether they're true or not. It doesn't care if they're accurate. It cares that you stop approaching the thing that's causing the elevated heart rate. And so you leave, and it works. The discomfort disappears for now. I want to introduce you to a concept I think about a lot, the deferred invoice. When you avoid something difficult, you don't erase the cost. You defer it. You push it into the future. And the future, unlike the present, charges interest. Think about the difficult conversation you didn't have 2 years ago. Whatever that conversation was, with a partner, a parent, a colleague, a friend, you calculated that the discomfort of having it was too high, so you didn't have it. And in the short term, you were right. It was more comfortable not to have it. But what happened in the 2 years since? The relationship calcified under the unsaid thing. The dynamic quietly shifted to accommodate the topic no one would address. You both learned to navigate around something that was never resolved. And now it's not one uncomfortable conversation. It's 100 small adjustments and one large distance that has gone between you. The invoice arrived, and it was larger than the original amount. This is the pattern, almost without exception. The minor friction we dodge today does not disappear. It returns, and when it returns, it often returns as something more fixed, more systemic, more embedded in the structure of your life. The feedback you didn't give becomes the team culture you now have to undo. The habit you didn't build becomes the health crisis you're now managing. The skill you didn't develop becomes the ceiling you can't break through. The boundary you didn't set becomes the relationship you resent. The business you didn't start becomes the regret you carry into your 60s. I'm not saying any of this to induce guilt. I'm saying it because I think we underestimate the timeline. We make decisions based on how they feel in the next 15 minutes. When the real accounting happens across years, we optimize for the present tense when we are actually building a future. Let's talk about how strength actually works, because I think we've inherited some confused mythology about it. The mythology says some people are just strong. Some people are just resilient. Some people are just capable of tolerating difficulty in ways other people aren't. It's a trait. You either have it or you don't. That mythology is almost entirely false. What we call strength, psychological resilience, emotional endurance, the capacity to remain functional under pressure, is not a fixed attribute. It is a constructed one, and it is constructed exactly the way physical muscle is constructed, through graduated exposure to resistance over time, with recovery in between. A muscle that is never asked to lift anything heavy never develops the density it is capable of. It stays functional for low demands, but introduce a heavy load and it fails. Your psychological structures work the same way. When you shield yourself from difficult conversations, your capacity for difficult conversation atrophies. When you walk away from every project that gets confusing, your ability to tolerate confusion, which is just another word for learning, never deepens. When you engineer your life to minimize social risk, your resilience to failure and judgment stays exactly as thin as it was. You do not protect yourself by avoiding hard things. You protect yourself by building the internal architecture that can bear them. And the only way to build that architecture is to engage with the very thing you are attempting to avoid. There is a term in psychology, distress tolerance. It refers to the capacity to remain functional during emotional pain. And here's the key finding from decades of research on this. Distress tolerance is not something you are born with. It is something you build through exposure. Every time you choose to stay present with discomfort, sit with it, let it do what it came to do, you deepen that capacity slightly. The threshold rises. What was unbearable becomes merely difficult. What was difficult becomes manageable. What was manageable becomes almost routine. This is how capability works. Not in the moment of the grand test, but in the 1,000 small moments when you had the option to leave and chose to stay instead. I want to spend some time on something that doesn't get talked about enough. I want to talk about the clumsy phase. Every skill has one. Every new capability, every new role, every significant relationship, there is a period at the beginning where you are bad at it, where you fumble, where the gap between where you are and where you want to be is painfully visible, not just to you, to everyone watching. The clumsy phase is the phase where most people quit, not because the thing is impossible, not because they are fundamentally unsuited for it, but because being clumsy in public is one of the most uncomfortable human experiences there is. We are wired, deeply wired, to protect our social standing, and nothing threatens social standing quite like being visibly incompetent at something. So we quit before we get good, or more precisely, we quit right at the threshold, the moment when we are uncomfortable enough to feel the full weight of our inadequacy, but not yet far enough to feel the early signs of competence. We quit in the valley between those two ridgelines, and we frame the quitting as discernment. We say it wasn't the right fit. I tried it and it wasn't for me. I realized it wasn't aligned with my values. Sometimes those things are true, but sometimes, if we're really honest, We quit because we couldn't tolerate being bad at something in front of other people. Here's what I want you to hold on to. The clumsy phase is not the exception to the learning process. The clumsy phase is the learning process. There's no path to competence that does not pass through it. There is no path to mastery that does not require you to be a beginner for longer than is comfortable. Every person you admire for their skill, their artistry, their ease, there was a season when they were doing exactly what you were doing and they looked as lost as you feel. They just didn't quit. They stayed in the discomfort long enough for the discomfort to become information, long enough for the feedback to become refinement, long enough for the clumsy to be calibrated. You can do the same, but only if you stay. Imagine a room. It is exactly the size of your current comfort zone, defined by the things you know how to do, the situations you know how to handle, the version of yourself that currently exists. It's not a bad room, it's familiar. The lighting is good, the temperature is controlled, you know where everything is. Every time you avoid something uncomfortable, you stay in that room. And here's the lie the room tells you. It tells you that you are safe, that staying in it is the responsible choice, that at least here, nothing bad will happen. But the room is not static. The world outside keeps changing. New demands emerge. New skills become necessary. The landscape shifts, and the room, your fixed, comfortable room, doesn't change with it. So what was once a well-fitted space gradually becomes too small. What was once shelter gradually becomes confinement. The person who avoids conflict their whole life doesn't stay comfortable. They become someone who cannot navigate any relationship where conflict is inevitable, which is every relationship that matters. They don't grow smaller. They're already the same size, but the world around them grows larger and the gap widens. The person who never learns to tolerate uncertainty doesn't stay stable. They become someone who cannot make decisions without perfect information, which means they stop being able to make decisions at all in a world that increasingly offers none. The room feels like safety, but a room you never expand is a room that eventually becomes a prison. Growth is not just a nice idea. It is a structural requirement for a life that continues to function as the world continues to change. I want to correct something. We have been taught to think of courage as dramatic, as the firefighter running into the burning building, as the soldier on the battlefield, as the whistleblower in the boardroom. And yes, those are acts of extraordinary courage, and they deserve that recognition. But there is another category of courage that is quieter, less visible, and far more relevant to the daily architecture of most of our lives. It is the courage to have the conversation you've been putting off. It is the courage to submit the work before you feel ready. It is the courage to stay in the room when you want to run. It is the courage to try again after something failed publicly. It is the courage to say, I don't know, in a room where everyone expects you to know. It is the courage to start something at 40, at 50, at 60, when the culture tells you the window has closed. It is the courage to be honest with someone you love when the lie would be easier. It is the courage to remain present in your own discomfort instead of immediately reaching for the thing that will make it stop. These are not small things. They are not lesser versions of courage. In many ways, they are harder because there is no fanfare, no witness, no acknowledgement. You did them in the ordinary texture of daily life, and no one cheers. You just wake up the next day slightly more capable, slightly less afraid, slightly more yourself. That is the work. That is the only work that actually matters. So what does this actually look like in practice? Because I don't want to leave you with a beautiful idea and no application. Here's what I know to be true from observation and from my own life. First, name the avoidance. You cannot change a pattern you haven't acknowledged. Most of us are avoidant in very specific, very predictable ways. There's a category of discomfort that sends us to the exit. For some people, it's conflict. For some, it's uncertainty. For some, it's the risk of looking foolish. For some, it's vulnerability. You need to know your pattern, because until you name it, the brain will keep dressing it up as something else. Second, shrink the ask. The reason most people fail to tolerate discomfort isn't that they lack willpower. It's that they ask for too much too fast. You don't build distress tolerance by throwing yourself into the deepest possible version of your fear. You build it incrementally. The goal is not the heroic gesture. The goal is slightly longer stay in the discomfort than last time. 5 minutes more. One more attempt. One more iteration after you thought you were done. You are building a muscle. Muscles don't get stronger in one session. Third, separate the feeling from the fact. Your discomfort is real, but your discomfort is not information about the correctness of the situation. It is information about the unfamiliarity of it. Those are not the same thing. This feels uncomfortable does not mean this is wrong or this is bad for me. It often means I have not been here before. Get fluent in that distinction. Start asking, is this discomfort a warning signal or is it just friction? Because friction and danger feel almost identical, and conflating them is one of the most common ways we walk ourselves out of necessary growth. Fourth, reframe the awkward middle, the clumsy phase, the uncertain phase, the phase where it's not working yet. That phase is not evidence of failure. It is a location of growth. It is literally where the development is happening. If you feel stupid, lost, or incompetent, that sensation is your brain rewiring. That is plasticity in action. The discomfort you are feeling is structural change. Try to greet it with that framing, even just occasionally. Fifth, stay for one more moment. When you feel the pull to leave, to put down the project, end the conversation, close the tab, put in the headphones, reach for the phone, try staying for one more moment. Not forever, just one more moment. Because the moment after the pull to leave is usually the moment when something meaningful happens. It's the moment right at the edge of your capacity. That edge is where growth lives. I want to tell you about what's on the other side, because we've never clearly imagined what we're leaning toward. On the other side of the conversation you've been avoiding is either a relationship deepened by honesty or a relationship revealed as unable to bear it. Both outcomes are better than suspended animation of avoidance. On the other side of staying in the clumsy phase is competence, sometimes mastery, and the quiet, durable confidence that comes from knowing you built it yourself. On the other side of tolerating uncertainty is the flexibility to navigate a world that offers increasingly little certainty and a strange freedom from the exhausting need to control outcomes. On the other side of the project that felt impossible is the discovery that you can do things you didn't know you could do. That discovery, that expansion of your own self-concept is one of the most significant things a life can offer. And on the other side of all of it, the conversations, the attempts, the failures, the awkward beginnings is a version of yourself who is larger than the one who started. Not perfect, not fearless, not incapable of doubt or difficulty, but larger, more able, more honest, more capable of love, of work, of presence. That is what discomfort is building, if you let it. We began with a question. Think about the last time you backed away from something difficult and ask, what did it cost you? I want to leave you with a different question. Think about the next difficult thing, the one that's already on the horizon, the conversation you know you need to have, the project you know you need to start, the habit you know you need to build, the version of yourself you know is possible but haven't yet been willing to endure the process of becoming. That thing, whatever it is, what would it cost you to stop backing away? Not what would it feel like. We know what it would feel like. It would feel like work. It would feel like uncertainty. It would feel like risk and exposure and the very real possibility of failure. But what would it cost you? I'll tell you, not much. A period of discomfort that will pass. Some moments of genuine struggle. A clumsy phase you'll one day look back on with something close to affection. Some days where you question whether it's worth it. That's the price. And what do you get for it? You get the life that was waiting on the other side of your avoidance. You get the capability that was waiting on the other side of the clumsy phase. You get the relationship that was waiting on the other side of the honest conversation. You get the person you were capable of being all along. The one who just needed to be pressed against something hard enough to take that shape. The discomfort will pass. The strength you build will stay. Choose the friction. Show up anyway. Stay in the room. That is the whole instruction.